They say a hound remembers the hand that feeds it, that the loyalty of a dog is an oath written in muscle and scent. Imagine, then, the darker possibility, the oath turned inward, the pack that once obeyed, now answering a different call. Tonight's story sits where myth, rumor, and human cruelty converge, a title that tastes like an old folktale and reads like a warning. He was eaten by his own hounds. We will approach this carefully. Where the archive is thin, I will mark rumor as rumor. Where historians disagree, I will label debate. Where a detail is clearly literary or mythic, I will say so. Many cultures already carry the image of the hunter undone by his hounds. The Greek tale of Actaeon, who after glimpsing a goddess, was torn apart by dogs he trained. And modern fiction has recycled that terrible symmetry to ask the same question. What happens when instruments of domination turn on their maker? These parallels will be our lodestars as we probe the likely blend of fact and symbolic meaning in the claim about a Russian general and his hounds. If you come for a slow, cinematic excavation of power, ritual, and the anatomy of revenge, like and subscribe and stand with me now as we step into a winter tale where scent and blood tell their own histories. In this video, we will sit at the edge of a clearing in a court where hunting is not a pastime, but a language of rank. The smell of tallow, the foam on boar's flanks, the soft leather of a glove that has never known a callous palm. These details will orient us in a world where to own hounds is to possess authority, where a well-bred borzoi or wolfhound carries as much social freight as a title. We will show how hunts were staged as lessons in domination. Nobles taught young aristocrats to read terrain by scent and to measure a man's courage by how he stood when a pack closed. But this video will not sentimentalize the animals. It will watch them as actors within a human choreography of power. We will also bring to the foreground the practicalities, how packs are kept, how scents are trained, how orders are given in the language of whistles and hand signs. These are not trivia, but the mechanics upon which later horror, if the tale is true, could have moved. Alongside the sensory description, we will place social detail, the obligations of retinues, the expectations of loyalty from retainers, the small humiliations that build the moral climate where a cruel command feels possible. Historians will remind us that animals have often been used to stage terror. Where records suggest Russian nobles kept prized hunting dogs, we will note that practice as cultural context rather than proof of a single event. The chapter will close on the cold breath of a pack at dawn, a sound that can be both promise and menace. The general as architect, orders, spectacle, and the ritual of punishment. Power seeks audiences. In this chapter, we will examine how a military figure, a general, a voyevode, a noble with command, comes to think of violence as theater. We will narrate scenes of ceremony that double as instructions, a man ordering a punishment not merely to discipline, but to teach the watching fields, to mark the boundary between obedience and rebellion. The writing will turn close to the sensory, the scrape of boots on flagstone, the sudden silence when hounds bay at a signal, the acrid smoke when torches are thrust to a pyre. We will ask why a leader would convert domestic animals into instruments of terror. Is it the desire for a public demonstration so total that nothing about a body remains private? Is it vengeance sharpened into policy? Where archives record judicial practices and corporal punishments, they will be treated as evidence of a culture in which spectacle and enforcement overlap. Where sources are absent, the narration will hold that lack up to the light and call it a shadow, not an answer. This chapter will be the darker gear turn of the narrative, how orders issued from a desk or a tent turn into motion on the ground, how men trained to command troops learn to command fear. The final lines will hang on a signal whistle and the way a pack assembles at a single sound.
The night the pack turned, eyewitness, rumor, and the anatomy of a tale. Here we press into testimony, what people claimed, what terrified servants whispered late, and what later chroniclers embroidered. This chapter will be cautious and forensic in equal measure. We will reconstruct from scattered accounts and the grammar of how rumors spread, the sequence that gives the story its shape. An insult or coup, a punishment ordered in fury, a public demonstration that escalates. We will name the limitations of each source, a memoir written decades later, a foreign diplomat's letter drafted for shock, a peasant's wistful retelling. And we will treat each as a kind of evidence with weight and bias. The sensory register will remain intimate. The copper taste of fear in a mouth, the soft padding of paws against cold earth, the stunned silence that follows an unforeseen breach of loyalty. We will also interrogate motive. Who benefits from telling such a story? Is it a moral inversion to show the predator consumed? A political slander to delegitimize a house, or a folk memory working its grief into fable? Where historical confirmation is lacking, we will say so plainly and frame the claim as legend, while still exploring what such a legend tells us about anxieties over power, betrayal, and the volatility of instruments of violence. Outside the grove, courts, chronicles, and the work of naming. Widening our aperture, this chapter will follow the tale as it leaves the immediate place of violence and enters public records, gossip networks, and the diplomatic ledger. How did courts react if such an event was reported? Which scribes preserved the detail and which erased it? Here, the narration will shift from animal senses to paper and ink. The dry rasp of a quill, the stamping of seals, the formal cadence of a judicial pronouncement. We will consider the political uses of rumor. Rival houses weaponizing the grotesque for advantage. Foreign envoys citing excess as cause for intervention. Priests trying to reconcile the act within moral theology. Again, where documentary traces exist, they will be treated with scrutiny. Where nothing survives, we will explore the social logic that makes such a story persistent. How does the process of naming, labeling an act barbaric, calling a man monstrous, transform individual horror into collective memory? This chapter will chart that transmutation and end on the uneasy fact that some events become legible only through the lens of their retelling. Flash, fable, and the judgment of history. Finally, we will be an elegy and a reckoning. We will return to the central image, a man undone by beasts he once commanded, not as a punchline, but as a mirror held up to power. The narrative will ask what it means to place such a violent end on a historical ledger. Does it admonish the arrogant? Does it weaponize compassion? Or does it merely fulfill a human hunger for poetic justice? We will consider parallels in myth and literature, and we will reflect on the historian's duty to distinguish between evidence and metaphor, to honor victims whether they appear in parchment or in rumor, and to admit uncertainty where it matters. Sensory detail will close the piece at a quieter key. The wet ground where paws have trod, the soft smell of blood in an abandoned hall, the slow turning of pages in a library that seeks to hold the past without flattening it. The chapter will end with questions about culpability, about vengeance, and about memory, leaving the viewer with the moral residue of the story rather than tidy answers. The pack's baying fades into history's uncertain fog. Whether the tale of a general consumed by hounds is literal fact or a moral fable stitched from rumor, its image lingers because it answers a deeper dread. that instruments of power can one day refuse the hand that feeds them. Imagine the wet earth where paws sank, the copper tang of fear in the air, the hush that follows a spectacle meant to teach obedience and instead becomes a lesson in reversal. Whether court record or campfire story, the account forces us to look at how violence is staged, who benefits from its theater, and how communities turn horror into cautionary tale or political weapon. Remember the human faces at the edges of legend, servants who whispered, witnesses who rewrote truth to survive, families left to negotiate shame and inheritance, and hold the uncertainty as part of the story's gravity. If this slow, careful telling unsettled you, if it opened a small space where pity and judgment can sit together, like, subscribe, and share so we keep wrestling with these hard histories, rather than letting them calcify into tidy myths.